Hey everybody, this is Jason Alba, and we are getting close to the almost last week of free April in Pluralside. So this is April 2020, and Pluralside has opened up their entire library. And what I'm doing this month is covering a bunch of topics from courses that I've created. These are soft skill and professional development courses, and this is the 17th one, I think. So anyways, I'm going to have to make up some in May and June. If you're watching this after free April, hit me up for a 30-day pass. Most of the time authors can ask for and usually get access to 30-day passes. So feel free to ask for a 30-day pass, especially if it's after April of 2020. But if it is in April of 2020, you still have time to go get on the free account. So anyways, today we're talking about difficult conversations, and you might notice that I have a button-up shirt. Usually I wear a t-shirt, and most of my t-shirts are black. That's my favorite. I love black t-shirts. I don't love button-up shirts, but this shirt has important meaning to me. So either it is laundry day and I have run out of my black t-shirts and all of my t-shirts, or this is the shirt that I wore at my last job. And actually, here's the answer. C, all of the above. I have run out of shirts, and this is the shirt that I wore frequently at my last job. And my last job is where I got the idea for the Difficult Conversations course. So let's just walk through that a little bit. I actually don't have notes this time. I'm going to do a little different format. We'll walk through the course here, and the modules, table of contents. And then I'm gonna share kind of the origin of why this course came about and why I was so excited about this course. And then I'm gonna flip over into the live side. I'm not gonna take you into live because I don't want to, I don't have permission from Pluralside to share that live on YouTube. But I want to read a discussion that came in the discussion area of this course, which I thought was really interesting. And it gives you a flavor of what happens once you're logged in and how we continue the conversation. So just real quick, this course is how to have difficult conversations. There's 4 modules. The first one is preparing for a difficult conversation. So this is when you know you have time, right? So something big is coming up, and you know, you might have to lay somebody off, you might have to discipline somebody, or on the flip side, you think you're going to go into a meeting where they're going to lay down the hammer and you're going to be in trouble. And how do you navigate through that? Or you're going to ask for a raise. You know, it's been 2 years and you haven't had a raise yet. And, you know, I mean, there's so many differences in companies and how they do raises. Some are very scheduled and you know exactly what's coming and you probably know how much your raise is going to be. And some are so unstructured that you might get a discretionary raise, you know, in 2 or 3 months, or but when you finish a project or something like that. It's not scheduled at all and you never know. And what I found is in the organizations that are not really structured and have those precise timelines, you could easily go a year and a half, 2 years, 3 years and not have a raise. And if you've never sat across from your boss saying, hey, it's time for me to get a raise, you know that can be a difficult, or if you never have, you might not know, but it can be a really difficult conversation. And so the idea of difficult conversations is not limited to work. If you are in a meaningful relationship or have kids or anything like that, then you know you can have difficult conversations. You can have difficult conversations with your neighbors. As secluded as you make yourself, you're eventually going to have a difficult conversation. I remember talking to a friend of mine, excuse me, and he was saying that a friend of his bought land up in rural Idaho, like in the mountains. And it was just, I don't remember how many hundreds or thousands of acres, but just nobody around. And he had to go around his entire border of his property and post the no trespassing signs. And it was interesting because even though he had hundreds or thousands of acres, he still had to have interface and difficult conversations with the neighbors. And all of these neighbors are like, I'm out here because I don't want to see humans. And oh, by the way, you're 1 foot into my 1,000-acre property. So anyways, you will have difficult conversations. The second module is having the difficult conversations. So this is what we do in the actual conversation. And the third one is follow-up. And if you followed any of my courses, you know I am a nut for follow-up. I'm really, really big on follow-up. And specifically, I mean, it's one thing to say, hey, make sure you follow up, but this is how and what the follow-up includes. And then the last module is kind of a catch-up or a catch-all or a gotcha, because, you know, it's great when we can prepare for these hard conversations, but what about when it's just sprung on us, right? And so, of course, if it's just sprung on us, we're not going to run over to Pluralside and watch this. I don't know, I don't know how long this is, probably 20 minutes or so, 15 or 20 minutes. It's not like you're going to be like, oh yeah, hold on, give me 15 minutes. I got to go watch this module real quick, right? So we really need to go in and we need to figure out how we have these conversations, which is all about communication. It's outbound and inbound communication, right? We need to figure out how we do that, and we need to practice it, and we need to make it a part of our DNA before we're faced with these situations. I've been in conversations with people, difficult conversations with people, and they seem like no problem at all. Like they're totally in charge and in control of their emotions and their feelings and their responses. And maybe they've even let go of some of the outcome some people are so passionate about the outcome that it's like, it has to be this way or else. And it's like, that actually really doesn't matter. And other people are like, oh, okay, well, that's okay, because we can work through that, right? And so I'm not saying that you're going to be on this end of the extreme or this end of the extreme, but somehow, if we can figure out these skills, then when we have conversations that are difficult, we can be better prepared going in. So let's just walk through real quick the table of contents. That's the unprepared one. Let me jump into the preparing. So difficult conversation models, emotional objectives. I should mention a really, really good course two courses that complement this really well are How to Be a Better Listener, Becoming a Better Listener, and then Leading with Emotional Intelligence. My emotional intelligence course was pivotal for me to understand emotions and the relationship to feelings and actions and reactions, and being self-aware and awareness of others and self-regulation. These are all elements of emotional intelligence. And so if you're interested in difficult conversations, those are two courses that would be really good. So emotional objectives, visualizing the conversation. I think I've said the word visualizing on like half of these reviews. Figuring out what your desired outcomes are. And one of my points there is that when you're walking into a difficult conversation where it's really easy for emotions to get out of control, whether they're yours or the other person's, right? And maybe you're going to go in completely prepared to be in control, and then something triggers you and it's over, right? One of the things I really want you to do is I want you to state your outcomes. I want you to know what you want out of this difficult conversation. And as you're working through the conversation, stay true to those outcomes. Now, you might figure out that you need to shift your outcomes, and that's okay. But I want you to be led by your desired outcomes as opposed to being led by your emotions and feelings. Addressing potential issues. Remember, we're still in the preparation phase. We're not in the meeting yet. So these are things that it's like, well, this could come up and this could come up and this could come up. What will I do if these things happen? Right? This is great. This is great preparation for these hard conversations. I remember a meeting that I went into. Well, before I went into the meeting, I listed out this stuff. I worked through this model before I went into the meeting, and it was awesome. I was so prepared. My emotions were in check. I knew what my outcomes were going to be. I had some idea of what some of the issues or objections were going to be. I felt in control and I felt good. The alternative is when it's like, I'm super duper busy doing emails, doing projects. Oh crap, I'm late for that meeting. Rush into the meeting. And then I'm just not ready for it, right? Okay, specific language to use or not use, the logistics of having these conversations, like where do you do it? Do you have it in private? Do you do it, in some offices that I've been in where it's open space offices, and then there's these little conference rooms. Well, some conference rooms have like all glass windows, and that could be really uncomfortable when you're having a difficult conversation. So thinking about the environment and stuff like that. All right, so in the having the conversation, setting up the physical environment, inviting someone else to the meeting. Why would you do that? Might be really, really important, especially if there's legal things that could come up. Body language, stating your problem, keeping the meeting on track, understanding emotions. If you don't keep the meeting on track and you don't get emotions, it's gone, right? It could be gone. Documentation and recording. I am not suggesting that you record all these meetings, but there are certain things that you should consider. You might want to record them, but if you do, you have to understand the legalities of it. Documentation. Here's a question. What happens if you go to court and this meeting gets brought up and you have documentation on it, right? So make sure that you're really careful with what you document. You've probably heard of some of these faux pas where somebody in customer support will be like, this person's a complete idiot. And they type that in their notes. They didn't say that to the person, but that's how they felt. And they put it in their notes. And now the whole world has seen that. Issues and objections. So when things come up, how do you deal with that? Saying what needs to be said. And then let's jump into the follow-up. Go back and looking at the meeting and what happened, and look forward. Like, where do we want to go from here? How to follow up with email, which is really important because your email gives you an opportunity to document what happened. And once again, you don't have to put everything in there, and maybe you leave some emotions out, or maybe you leave a lot of your emotions out. But there's ways to use email as a tool for strong documentation for later. It could be praising and stuff, but anyways, it's a great tool. Check that out. It's a 4-minute clip. Post-conversation thoughts and actions. What do you do afterwards? How ignoring the topic and the person if issues come up afterwards. Like I've had situations where like with my kids in school, and something came up with a kid who was bugging one of my kids. And I told the principal, I said, look, the principal was like, okay, this kid's going to write an apology note and this is going to be all taken care of. And I said, okay, that's great. I'm glad for that exercise, but I don't want to have problems with this kid later. Like I don't want to hear that he's giving my kid the stink eye every time my kid walks by. Like this needs to end, right? And so we want to make sure that we we don't leave things left out there so that it creates more problems down the road. Confidentiality and integrity. This is a time to be really mature about some of these things. All right, the last one is the having difficult conversations that you aren't prepared for. 2 options when you're unprepared: clarifying the issue, checking your emotions. There's this really cool concept that I learned about he who talks first, and then there's the rest of a phrase after that. And then the power of thank you. So that's what this course is all about. Let me go back to my origins of this course and the inspiration. So when I was working in my last company, they were a really raw and honest and authentic company, generally. I mean, as companies go, it was pretty awesome that way. And one of the things that the president and CEO really stressed was we have difficult conversations. We don't avoid them. We don't work around them. If something needs to be said because we're stuck, or because we're not making progress like we should, or because we're afraid, he said, we need to have those difficult conversations. And when we have those difficult conversations, I think he said something like, I have never seen anything bad come out of these difficult conversations. Which was really profound to me, because I can definitely tend to avoid these difficult conversations. I'm not really one to have conflict and stuff like that. So the idea that it's like, okay, I know it's hard. It's going to be hard. There could be feelings. There could be repercussions. But man, if we could actually have a really good conversation and resolve some of these issues, what can we accomplish? Like, where can our relationship go? How can our communication increase? What can this mean for our product or our design or our customers or the organization? There are so many good things that can happen when we have these difficult conversations. Now, let me rewind about 15 or 16 years ago. So Jim Collins wrote a really cool book called Good to Great, a super book. It's getting older, which means it's a classic. It definitely is a classic. If you look up classic business books, Jim Collins' Good to Great is going to be one of them. And I don't remember exactly how I think he calls them difficult conversations. But anyways, there's this part in the book where he basically says that having intense conversations, and I'm gonna slaughter this. These are my own words. Having intense, hard conversations is really important and valuable and critical for your organization. The organizations who succeed and who last over time, these are organizations that have these intense conversations. So 15, 16 years ago, I'm sitting in my office or in my boss's office, and he's yelling and going into all this stuff that's so unnecessary. And he's getting really passionate, and he's kind of digging into people because that's what he did. He was his idea of power was to tear someone down so that he could put himself in a position of power. It was really, really demented. So anyways, he said, and he knew that I loved the Jim Collins book. He said, hey, look, Jason, Jim Collins says that we need to have these types of conversations. And I was like, no. Difficult conversations does not mean that we're tearing people down, right? Going back up to, I think it was the first module, emotional objectives, desired outcomes. Is your desired outcome to ruin that person or to like crumple them all up and hopefully they rise like a phoenix? Like, what is your desired outcome? And if your desired outcome is to hurt and tear down and leave somebody bleeding in the corner, that's not what I'm talking about. That's not the kind of difficult conversation I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is something, like I said, where you're stuck, where progress could be had, but you're not making that progress. Okay. So anyways, those are just a couple ideas of where I'm coming from. Let me switch over, and I'm going to read this question that I got, and it was from a year ago. The question and answer is I go pretty deep in the answer, but I just wanted to give you an idea that when you go through a Pluralside course, this is an hour and a half long. When you go through this course, there's stuff that's not said. Like, I couldn't fit it all in. And there's stuff that I very purposefully and strategically said, but really you could have a whole semester long class on having difficult conversations, right? So in this hour and a half, we're not going to do it all. Okay. So what I do, and I know a lot of Pluralside authors do this, is we try and continue the conversation in the discussion. So if you're a Pluralside customer, go into the discussions, and you can't do it on the mobile, but go on the web app or the web interface and continue the conversation. Tell us what you liked, what you got out of it. And if you have any questions, ask the questions. So Adam says, thanks for the great video. One thing I have a difficult time with, aside from difficult conversations, is, tell me if this isn't difficult, passive-aggressive communication. Who likes that? For example, hearing in jest from managers or coworkers disparaging comments. Often I feel taken hostage in the situation because I'm not sure how to react, especially if I'm in a group setting. Any pointers, reading material on how to handle this more insidious type of difficulty? Still difficult conversations. It sounds like a difficult work environment. Like this sucks, right? All right, so my reply. Hi, Adam, thank you for the question. Unfortunately, this is prevalent enough to have articles from multiple places online. So I just copied a Google search on, I don't know, let me see if I can see what that was. I searched for how to handle passive-aggressive comments at work. Unfortunately, there are too many articles on how to handle passive-aggressive comments at work. You know why? Because managers can suck. Managers should be on top of this. Managers should be squashing passive-aggressive comments. And I'll tell you what, one of Jim Collins' things is if there's the right person for your company, you need to get them in your company, even if you don't have a role. One of my things is if you got the wrong person in your company, and I don't care if they're leading your company in technology or they are the most important deliverer or operational person in your company, if they are cancerous and creating problems like this, you're going to lose the rest of the company, and you're letting that person shape your culture. Okay, this is a problem. So managers need to be on top of that. Many of the articles seem to have similar tips, which I don't necessarily agree with. Go ahead and read through some of those. My advice, though, is a little different. Of course, I haven't been in the room with you, because maybe Adam is the problem, and I haven't heard the comments. Maybe they really aren't that bad, and he's just taking them the wrong way. So my thoughts might be a little off, but here are my thoughts based on what you wrote. First, I'm guessing that these comments are somewhat common from those managers or coworkers, and others notice that. This is toxic behavior and surely makes other people feel uncomfortable. In other words, you might be wronged and you might feel wronged, but you have to recognize there's people around that are seeing this, realizing that you're in the right and the other person really is a jerk, even if they're not ready to stand up for you, which is sometimes very, very difficult. So I wouldn't put that on them at all. How you react, in my opinion, is more important than any of the toxic comments that they say. People are already judging the boss and the coworkers and realizing they don't want to be on the receiving end of that filth. When I was writing this, I was thinking about a narcissistic relationship or an abusive relationship where one kid is getting all the abuse and the other kids are just surviving, right? They're kids and they don't know, they're not psychologists. They don't know how to handle narcissism and abuse and stuff like that. So all they're doing is just surviving. That's why I put realizing they don't want to be on the receiving end of that filth. They are also observing you and how you react. Are you just as bad as they are, or are you above them? It might help to come up with some very assertive comments, such as, can we get back to the meeting? So if you're in a meeting and someone starts becoming inappropriate, just bring it right back. Or something that shows you are not entertaining feeding their toxicity, nor are you ignoring it, but that you're not stooping to their level. This display of maturity and reaction will not go unnoticed. If you're in this environment, I know it's hard and it sucks, but be the bigger person. And I know that's hard too, but be the bigger person, because your career is not defined by how others treat you. It's defined by how you act and react in these types of situations. In a year from now, people that were in that meeting that aren't even in your department anymore, or they aren't even in your company anymore, might come to you and say, hey, you know what? I worked with you back then, and I really admire how you handled that situation. Nobody liked that guy, but you handled it so well. I would like you to be a part of my team, something like that. Second, I like the idea that we praise in public and scold in private. It could be worth your time to schedule a private meeting with the appropriate people. I'd usually choose to do this one-on-one, which could include anyone from the appropriate managers or leaders, HR, or those who are making these comments, and address the issue head on. For example, tell me that's not going to be a difficult conversation. For example, if you were to meet with the offender, you might say, I noticed that when we are in meetings, you tend to say things like, and then whatever they say. I find this to be offensive. Remember, in the first module here, we're talking about these outcomes, and we're talking about specific language that we should use to be very clear. I think in the second module, I talk about making sure to say what you need to say, okay? And I'm asking you to stop making those comments. It's pretty clear, right? If you meet with leadership or HR that is not involved in the comments, be sure to be clear about what's being said, because They will usually take your words very serious, and you want to be accurate. Lead with facts, not emotions. So what I'm saying there is, if somebody is saying very specific things to you that are mean or inappropriate, you need to say what those things are. When you say these words, that's not appropriate, or that's not right. We have a problem, okay? So you need to have that, instead of just being like, I feel like you're disrespectful, or I feel like you're mean, or I feel like you're inappropriate. Some people need to know exactly what you're talking about. Okay, third, assuming that nothing is changing and the comments continue, even after addressing the issue with the offenders in private, I would then be more strong and assertive in the meetings when comments are made. I suggest you come up with a few statements that are clear and designed to stop the comments. Will you please stop making those disrespectful comments to me? I find them very distracting and not helpful to the task at hand. That's very assertive, very clear. Practice this, wordsmith this, so that when the time comes to make your statement, you are firm and not overly emotional, nor do you lose it. Okay, so this is really cool. I mean, I would want to make this a blog post or something like that, and I could, but this is a great dialogue to have. And ending, I say, I respect the advice that some of the articles in the Google search I linked to above, but even if you understand the person's motivation, because that's one of the things they say, they're like, well, you need to just understand where they're coming from. Well, if you're being inappropriate, rude, and a jerk, I'm not your shrink, okay? I'm not the person who needs to understand your motivation, but this is inappropriate and it needs to stop, okay? And some of the other things, you might not get to the point where you actually stop the behavior. Those articles that I found and I read through, they just seemed a little too weak. They were not assertive enough. Doesn't mean you're being rude. It just means you're being clear and you're standing firm. I hope that the 3 ideas above help you maintain your dignity and reputation while correcting the bad behavior. I know how much it stinks to work in a hostile environment. I know how much it stinks to work in a hostile and toxic environment. Yes, I do. And I hope you can resolve this soon. Good luck. Just an example of what the Pluralside authors do. I know a lot of authors on our Slack channel will be like, hey, I got this question, or I'm having this dialogue or whatever. We love it, man. Like if you got questions on our stuff, we put a lot of time into our courses, and there's a lot of stuff we couldn't talk about just because of time or whatever restrictions we had. And if we can continue the conversation in the discussion area, that's awesome. We love it. So anyways, how to have difficult conversations. It's a great topic for work. It's a great topic for managers and leaders. It's a great topic. There's another course that I should have mentioned, how to work with, I think it's called Working with Different Personalities. And so this is understanding the personality types and what drives people and motivates people and why they think the way they think. And when you understand somebody's personality, it can help you when you're going into these difficult conversations. So I hope that helps. We're going to wrap up for today. Tomorrow is really good. Hold on, let me find what we're talking about tomorrow. I usually have this up. This morning I have been in cutting sheetrock, fishing my hand through fiberglass. That's no fun. Pulling Cat 5, and I gave my son the job of terminating it. So he's 10. Got to learn sometime. All right, hold on. So today is the 23rd, and tomorrow is Friday. We're going to talk about teams and innovation. So how to create an innovative environment for your teams, which is it was actually one of the more fun courses that I got to work on. So that's it. Share this channel with your friends. Today was 17, so we have about 20 or 13 left. We won't finish during this month. And if you haven't got on Free April yet, the way you do it is you go to Pluralsite and you find this hashtag Free April and click the sign up button by the hashtag. See this one down here says start a free 10-day trial. That's not the one you want. You want to do the one by free April. If you're watching this after April 2020, then come to me or any other Pluralside author and see if we can't get you a 30-day pass. With that, good luck with your difficult conversations.